Greetings, beautiful souls, and welcome back to another episode of Passion and Purpose. I'm your co-host, Gaia, and today we're opening space for a conversation about the impact of fatherhood through presence, guidance, protection, love, and legacy. For some, the word father brings comfort and support. For others, it may bring questions, distance, grief, or healing. But wherever you are on your journey, this conversation is here to create understanding and not division. Today's episode, The Father Factor, is about exploring the emotional, spiritual, and generational influence fathers and father figures have on our lives, our relationships, and our communities. So as you listen, we invite you to reflect with an open heart on the ways guidance, leadership, and masculine presence have shaped your journey. Join me as I welcome our co-host Dia and Mr. Al into today's episode of The Father Factor. All right, welcome on. Welcome to the Father Factor episode, Dia and Mr. Al. How y'all doing today?
Thank you for that strong intro, man.
Absolutely.
Yes, thank you so much. And I'm excited about this conversation.
All right, well, let's get into it.
What did fatherhood look like in your upbringing, and how has that shaped your view?
All right, Mr. Al, you want to jump on that one since we got
Yes,
Mr.
I
Al, the
will.
father, here?
Well, yes, fatherhood for me was more so an idea of fatherhood because I really didn't have anything to mimic or even compare from. So all guys, I believe, was something to follow, even if that was a negative uh, that strayed me in a different direction. Based off because my father was killed when I was 3 years old, as I shared with you guys, and he did have a bunch of brothers, but I wasn't in their presence enough for them to really start something structural with me that I can learn from. However, I grew up on the north side of St. Louis, Missouri, and I followed those that maybe had a more criminal like attachment, and I followed that based off what I seen. And as I say, you either learn things how you was told or showed, and so I mimic and emulated what I seen. So in that, it was maybe in real time, like the guidance and correction wasn't something that was that I follow, a model that I follow. Instead, I follow superficial things that I believe that makes you a man, and just the ego and all the things that I would get praises for. And so people pleasing a lot of, and a lot of men don't admit, but I wanted to be accepted and needed to be accepted. So I followed those directions right there. And it took me a series of events and a journey to understand what real manhood was and is. And so now I not only follow that model, I began questioning like what should be the presence of a man, what is needed, and what did I need as somebody that was misguided in the first place. And that's how I came up with the structure of what should be needed here. And I carry that path to this day of what's needed.
So, for me, growing up, fatherhood, my father, he was in the home, and I remember I was a daddy's girl. I looked forward to Saturday mornings, and he would come in and tickle our ears and be so silly with us. And I just remember feeling like my dad was my protection. And I remember this one event specifically when there was this house across the street from us. At one point, my parents they broke up, and I remember, just thinking back with my family in general, I loved my family. I loved our four and no more. It was me, my mom, my dad, and my brother, my big brother. And I just loved our family. And so when I found out, I remember there was a specific time when some of the kids in my class and stuff, their parents started breaking up, and I would think, gosh, I'm glad that ain't, my parents. And eventually, me and my brother, we had that sit down conversation where our parents were sitting us down, letting us know that they were going to be breaking up. And it was the most devastating moment in my life. I couldn't believe it. And so, when my father, ended up leaving the home, me and my brother, we ended up staying with my mom, and my father moved out. And I remember there was this house across the street from us, and it was like during the winter time, and the house caught on fire, and it literally like just got completely burned up. And I remember being so afraid. I was so afraid our house was going to burn up. And all I kept thinking was, I just wish my dad would come. I just wish my dad would get here. Because if my dad is here, our house won't burn up. And that was just for me like this symbol as I got older and I look back on that moment of just how much my dad was protection for me. And even though as I got older and in my adulthood, we would become a bit more estranged in our relationship, as a kid, my dad was my everything. He was my protector. He was the one who made sure we were okay. And I feel like how that translated over to my adulthood, I really just, I never felt like I lacked that sense of needing that male in my life. And so it really kept me grounded even when, reaching that age of boys liking you and you wanting to have boyfriends and stuff like that. I just felt like that was something that wasn't missing for me. So I had a standard. And even though I had low self esteem and things of that nature, I always felt like the person for me, I'm not going to have to jump up and hoop and holler and move and wave my hands to get them to notice me. The person who's for me, they will notice me. And I feel like a lot of that mindset just came from that security that I felt like I had from my own father.
All right. So, as far as growing up and my upbringing, fatherhood looked very similar to how it still looks today. I actually live within walking distance from my father. He was very present and still is very present. And it looked like love through sacrifice. I lived with my father for a good bit of my life, but I could see, I remember times where he would have to go to work. So he would have to make arrangements for my grandmother to, watch me on the weekends when he went to work. Or I had an aunt that was a bus driver and she might, hey, you getting on the bus with me today? I'm going to drop you off. So, it was just that love through sacrifice. I can remember him showing up. One memory that I will never forget is the senior assembly awards at the high school. And during the time where they were passing out scholarships, they asked, all parents to hold your applause until the end. Well, not my daddy. The fact that he rushed to get there from work. I mean, he came, he was working at Billings. He had on one of his old T-shirts with the hole in, but I didn't care about any of that. It was his presence. He was there. And whenever they called my name for the scholarship, I remember him clapping up in the top and yelling, "Yay, rookie, where to go, rookie." So that has shaped my life because that in turn, it made me want to show up for everything for my daughter, be it awards or sporting events. I mean, we just had her 8th grade formal this past Friday. We've got the student athlete banquet Tuesday. We've got 8th grade graduation Friday, and I'm there for all of it. Another way that, fatherhood showed up in my upbringing was through discipline. He was the disciplinary factor through consistency and through teaching. So even if the language for the emotional expression wasn't there, his presence was.
Every father matters. Every father leaves a legacy, whether through his presence, his absence, or his example. While we can't rewrite the past, we all have the opportunity to shape what comes next. Healing, love, and intentional choices have the power to break cycles and build a stronger legacy for the next generation.
What are some overlooked roles of a father beyond providing financially?
So I can jump on board with this one, and I'll say a father's role extends beyond financial provision because children remember presence long after they remember presents, the presents that were gifted and given. So I'll say that again. A father's role extends far beyond financial provision because children remember presence. So they're going to remember the time that was spent with them long after they remember, oh, my dad gifted me this ball. My dad gifted me this. So one overlooked role of a father is emotional safety. The ability for a child to feel protected, heard, affirmed, and supported emotionally can shape their confidence, relationships, and your self worth for the rest of your life. Fathers also play the role of teacher, teaching through example, not just words. Children observe how a father handles conflict, how fathers communicate, and how they treat others, and how they respond to stress, as well as how they carry responsibility. So, in turn, I learned a lot from looking at my father, especially when it came down to, responsibility, whether it was financial responsibility, whether it was making sure, Ren has everything that she needs. So now I ensure that my daughter has everything that she needs.
I agree with Ren. A father is more than just a paycheck, but the blueprint uh, to what is self worth. And so when I look at financial security, I look more as a father should be the one that shows his child what is their self worth, like the value of legacy and safety should be a priority over financial situations. Definitely, we have been looked at as men should be the provider, but provider is a broad word. It should be more than a provider of finances, more than a provider of some type of economic protection, but more so a provider of how to increase the value of your child so they can be, in fact, a part of you, a part of your legacy, a part of to know how to covet a family and itself, and that's real protection. So when we start looking at fathers as providers, we should ask ourselves the question, providers of what? Because many individuals, if they don't have the knowledge, whereabout, the resources, then how can they provide something? And we should get back to the things of when we were blacksmiths and we taught different skill sets to our children, because those things that we can control more so than hoping I work a good job and hope that my child is fill out an application for that same company, which there's no guarantee that they will get a job based off my name. And that job could fold and let us go. But at least if I pass on a skill set, that's something that we can keep and pass along to the next generation and generation after. I help a lot of men in my line of work. And the first thing that they say, even if they come from a traumatic past or experience, they believe based off society and the social norm that if I just work, if I get a job, if I work, I should be good. What about all the other things that we need to even look at, places that we need to heal? So if a father doesn't know how to heal, and that's one less thing that he can pass along to his child. So today I'm a provider at healing. Today I'm a provider at releasing. And today I'm a provider at having an understanding and taking another person in consideration. So before I'm a paycheck or a financial ability for someone else, I'm a blueprint of how to become a decent person. And that's what I provide.
I really like that, Mr. Al. I really do. And you made a very strong and valid point about going back and, just setting that foundation of teaching them how to go back to your skills and your crafts and just tapping into, like you said, the blacksmith, because that also to me has a lot to do with this is a completely different episode. But I feel like when people are going in and building someone else's dreams, that's what causes like depression and anxiety. But if you had like your own craft, your own skills, you had a father figure or your father in your life showing you, like, hey, let me teach you how to do this. Let me teach you how to lay these bricks. I feel like that will eliminate a lot of those things in the work environment.
Yes, thank you for that, man.
A father's greatest provision isn't always found in his paycheck. It's found in his presence. It's found in the values he teaches, the safety he creates, the skills he passes on, and the example he lives every day. Financial support may meet today's needs, but love, wisdom, healing, and character become a legacy that lasts for generations.
How has history impacted fathers?
Well, if we're talking about history as a whole, I believe that there has been a lot of labels, stigma, stereotypes that's put on fathers. And I think as we go through history, that many individuals believe, especially when it comes to systemic institutions that exist, that the woman may have a leverage over the man. If it's a dispute, uh, and I'm not just speaking on domestic disputes, but any dispute that the woman probably would have favor. If we look at history, though, I remember that was not something the man always had say so. I'm a peer support trainer, and I was just giving prompts to women on being very impactful in stirring the mental health field, because we jokingly say, man, my old lady crazy. But back then, that may take them to an institution, and they never had a out date for that individual. So it was two women that really championed that brought about assessments, and that's how the whole clinical world was kind of developed. Out of if we label somebody something, we have to give them a fair assessment of what that looks like and what's the duration of that. So history has changed and then evolved. And I just think, and I think this often, we are still looking for our balance when it comes to when we understand the balance of a man and a woman. It's almost impossible to answer this question without tagging in the woman as herself, because I remember biases on both ends, and now we're back at an imbalance. And I believe that over history, what it has been proven that families are stronger together. That's something that we can definitely count on. Individually, I don't think. I think each individual stand up maybe a more challenging time by himself. It has been proven, and we say, we're better together, and that is true. And this don't necessarily mean that I have to stay in a uncomfortable situation or a challenging a marriage or something that I disagree with, but I definitely shouldn't take that challenge and past experiences and move on away from my responsibilities, my continuations of what I contribute as a father figure. So I do say we can learn from history by taking a glimpse and saying what worked and what didn't work, and how can I improve on only my condition? How can I improve me as an individual, and therefore hope that I can model the behavior that I want my children or even others that's bystanders that's watching move forward and get ahead. So that's my take on it.
So I think history has impacted fathers in profound ways because every generation passes down not only wisdom, but also survival patterns, emotional conditioning, and unresolved wounds. So for a long time, many men were taught that their value was mainly tied to providing, protecting, and enduring hardship silently. Emotional vulnerability and like softness and open communication, those were often discouraged or seen as weakness. So many fathers carried responsibilities that were never like they were never emotionally prepared for, while also lacking spaces to process their own pain. And when people are surviving, they don't always have the capacity to nurture in the ways that they want to. So I would say that's how history has impacted fathers. Just a couple of ways of how history has impacted fathers.
I can agree with both of you, and I think that to your point, Ren, um, how and going back to the previous question too, it's like over the course of time, history have said men provide, women are the nourishers. But and to Mr. Al, your point, there is a pendulum swing that says there is a balance though, and I feel as if um, in men who have historically shown more of a nourishing side or shown more of a emotional side, they were, to your point, they were identified as weak. You know, you're supposed to be the provider, you're supposed to be strong, you know. And so these are and I'm kind of getting into our next question, but I just feel like you guys have said it perfectly. You know, history have kind of just said that you are the provider and the woman is the nourisher, but we're getting to a space in time where I feel like we're starting to see that it's a balance. And like you said, Mr. Al, it takes a village. It takes a village, and everybody plays their role, but even from the perspective of a father, there still is that emotional the children's they still need that emotional support from their father, and that is not something that is considered weak, in my opinion.
I have to I want to speak to clarity as far as gender roles, like and I learned this by marriage. So if it's my role, because it may be an unwritten law that the man take out the trash, the woman cook. These are unwritten laws, unless uh, and if you guys are listening to our audience, I I strongly encourage you to write the expectations of your mate down while you are courting. Like, what is your expectation of this individual? And I want to clear up some gender roles. Like we all in this great universe, this place where we dwell. If we see a need, we should pick up on that need. So if I come in tired and my wife, she may roll the trash out, and all I can say is thank you, babe. I was so tired, it slipped my mind. I forgot about it. Now I'm a vegetarian. My diet restrictions have changed in the last 18 years. And I profoundly do most of the cooking. But it's never, I'm looking at my wife like, hey, this should be your job. And I done made a mess cooking. And so you wash those dishes at any given time, like what makes a strong, like dynamic. And I know this segment is more so about fathers, but I have to keep reiterate that it's families. And when I see a need, I think that I should cater to that need. Whatever our roles are, you may not be gifted or maybe great at that role. So if we can see what are your strengths and how can we manage our weaknesses together, I think collectively we'll have a better impact. So we need to scratch kind of like those gender roles. We know today that we have amazing women that are CEOs of companies and that such. So they may be the breadwinner, but this shouldn't dismiss the man of who he is and vice versa. So this is something that we need to look into. And I think sometimes those stereotypes or traditional viewings cause us a deeper separation in families as a whole.
And I totally agree with everything that Mr. Al just said. You know, even as far as when you're courting someone, maybe setting those expectations, because I have landed under the title. I was told last year, hey, you have a masculine womb. I said, what's a masculine womb? And, you know, she told me, she said, it's when someone grew up around their father. So you view things differently than someone whose father was not present. Because I told her, I said, you know, I don't really fall into those roles, things like what Mr. Al was just speaking about, because I grew up seeing my father work, but then he would come home, and this is when I was younger, he would come home and I saw my father washing dishes. I saw my father cooking. I saw my father, you know, washing clothes. So to that, you know, what Mr. Al just said, I totally agree with that. And then what I was going to state before that is just, you know, bridging that gap that history has made it seem like, you know, men are weak for being vulnerable and offering softness and open communication because it's needed. You know, unfortunately, when they don't receive these things growing up, it can create chaos in the relationships. It shows up, going back to a previous episode that we had. This is also considered generational language trauma. And, you know, not having the emotional fluency to be able to express what it is that you're feeling. So therefore, it causes issues in not just relationships, but in family matters with your kids. And then, you know, sometimes fathers wonder why your kids can't come and communicate with you because they feel like you don't know how to speak to them. So that's just another way that history has impacted fathers.
History shapes us, but it doesn't have to define us. The past explains a lot, but it does not have to determine the future. Every generation has the opportunity to break unhealthy cycles. Keep what was good and build something even better. That's how legacies change, not by repeating history, but by learning from it.
What messages have men received about fatherhood?
I can start. I'll say, I think men have received the message that being a father means carrying pressure quietly, uh, being the provider, staying strong at all times, and not allowing themselves to be emotionally vulnerable. A lot of men were taught to survive, but not always how to emotionally connect. And because of that, some men grew up believing love is shown only through work, through sacrifice, or financial provision, when in reality, children also need affection. They need reassurance, communication, patience, and emotional safety. So I think one of the most healing shifts happening right now is that more men are allowing themselves to become emotionally present fathers, like Mr. Al was speaking, you know, not just authority figures.
I wanna I wanna connect with what Rand said. I was processing a thought here, but we do teach. Fatherhood has came to a point where it teaches survival, and there's nothing wrong with survival. But survival is survival only. Like it put everything else that your child may go through, uh, and kind of like to just freestyle in life. It's almost as if your child was going through something, and you are, say, the only adult there. Maybe the wife is somewhere else, or and this child desperately needs to be nourished, needs to be held. And could you imagine that father saying, "Well, we have to wait till your mother get back for me to give you some nourishment and some hugs, because I really don't know how to do that." And some men, if they said that, that would be the truth. But that's that's the problem there, because I just shouldn't be the provider. I just shouldn't be the disciplinary. I should also be the one that shows how to model emotional regulation, how coping skills. Instead of me being proud that I taught my son how to put up his dukes and turn the jab over, maybe I should also teach him de-escalating techniques, as well as how to implement conflict resolution, that that individual that he was facing may even learn from him. And this is not being a coward. This is being a very wise young individual, so that you can make it to manhood. Because mass incarceration is a real thing. Displaced from the home is a real thing. A man dying of suppression and having more heart attacks than anyone else on the planet is a real thing. So looking at those things, we should learn more than just survival. And when you really think of the word survival as a whole, are we really surviving? If we are the ones that's dying first, then we are failing even at surviving. So I think it's time for us to learn other things. Like we say, if I knew better, I'd do better. So challenge yourself, man, in what you know, so that you may be able to pass something more fulfilling to your child as a whole. That means the daughter and the son, because often we get caught up in, I teach my boys and I let my daughters do whatever, because I don't want to seem insensitive, and I don't really have advice for them because I'm not a woman. No, no, I need you to consult with me as well. Consult with me. Let's have my first date with my daughter. Let me show you how a man is supposed to treat you, the expectations of that, questions you may have for me, and I'm learning at the same time. So these things that should take place. So father shouldn't feel displaced. The only thing I can teach you is survival. Like my dad, he sure knew how to survive, but we question if he knew how to live. So that's something that we should pass along.
Mm. I love that, Mr. Al. It made me think about one quote that my father, I won't even call it a quote. It was a legit life gem that he dropped with me, like did mention earlier, back during the stages where you first started dating and wanting to have a boyfriend and things. And, like I said, the emotional language wasn't always there, but I clearly understood his messages. And I was dating, it was in high school, and the young man would come and pick me up on the weekends, sun to be going down, and da 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 da. And one day, walking out the house, my dad looked at me. He said, "Let me tell you something. You ain't nobody's nighttime girlfriend." And that was something that has stuck with me for the rest of my life. So whenever I've ever found myself getting a situation where I feel like, now, is this person dating me, or is this person? I always remember that. I always remember that. So, I think you're right as far as not just teaching survival, but actually teaching the life lessons that, fathers see. It helps, like you said, not just teaching your boys this, but having that father. My father didn't have any sons. He just had the two daughters, and I was his oldest daughter. And I always tell him, I said, Dad, you were so much more strict on me than you were my sister. There's a 10-year age gap between us, but I get it, with that. It's like, he loves us the same, but my mother, they split up when I was younger, but it's like he did the very best he could teaching me the best way he knew how. And he would share these life lessons with me. Hey, you ain't nobody's nighttime girlfriend, or you ain't nobody's rug to walk over and walk in, wipe your feet on. So a lot of these things now, people who are a little more sensitive will be looking like, dang, that was kind of harsh. But now I get it. And I instill these things into my daily life, my adulthood. Whether it was on the job, hey, you can't just be letting people walk over you. So it was so many things that he shared with me in my childhood that, they stick with me even now. And I'm just grateful for the things that he did teach me. He taught me. Even one thing that I pray, I hope that in our audience, a lot of people will start to lean towards, is teaching your children financial literacy. And that was something that my father taught me. When I was able to finally get my first job, he would always tell me, include the pot as one of your bills. And I'm like, include the pot? What? Yes. Include putting some money aside into that pot for a rainy day. You never know when you might have a rainy day.
This is really good, and I can agree with so much of what both of y'all have said. My dad, he used to tell me, you whenever you get a job and you get older, he said, make sure you have your own house, and or have your own money, your own car, your own place, so you ain't got to depend on no one. And I remember he used to say that, and I would just, kind of shrug it off, but I didn't realize that as he was saying that, it was actually getting ingrained in me, because when I became of age and I was able to take care of my own, I always made sure that I had my own place to stay, that obviously when I met my husband and he came on and did the things a man does for his family, but I just never was someone that felt like I needed to rely on anybody. And that was, I feel like, because my dad, he just kept saying it over and over. So I was moving in that direction as I got older, when I didn't even know it. And I can say too that, to what you said, Mr. Al, I think it's so beautiful when I see these videos of men who are learning to do their daughter's hair. And they're taking, and I mean, and they really, they take it seriously, and you see the energy that they're putting into it, and they want to show their daughters, like, you are worth me taking time to learn how to do your hair. So mom's not just the one doing your hair. And I have a really good friend at work, and she talks about how her dad, she's Indian, and she talks about how her dad, the relationship with her dad, he was the one who kind of taught her about the birds and the bees and all that stuff. And he, was the one that when she was serious about the guy she was dating that would end up being her husband, he had already told her, when you get to that point, come talk to me. And then her and her dad together got up the words and the energy to go tell her mom. So it was her dad that she had that relationship with. And so just so many different beautiful experiences I see with females and their fathers. And one of the other things that I was thinking about with this question, some of the narratives that men are told about fatherhood, I feel like some of the narratives are somewhat subtle, even when the female becomes pregnant and you have the baby shower for the mother. You have the baby moon where the mother gets showered, she gets to go on the baby moon. She gets baby gifts. You know, which is a very, I mean, she deserves it because she's literally carrying life. But I feel like in some of that subtle messaging where the father is pushed to the back, it kind of can tell the father that you're not as important as the life giver. but it took the two of you to create the life. And so I feel like sometimes, even just through the narratives that we have created from a societal perspective, it can leave the father feeling like he is not the one that should get praise for even being a part of bringing that life. And I don't know what that does to a father or what that does to a man's mind, but just from a female perspective, I just look at that and say, that does seem to sort of diminish the value of the father in that life-giving process. And so I think that sometimes that can even lend to sometimes where it's like in some families where the father, you don't, he doesn't get to have the you listen to the mom, not the dad, different things like that. But I think just that subtleness, even some of that subtle messaging can even tell a man how valuable he is, in that in fatherhood. And so I think we can do an even greater job, in championing fathers and letting them know that you are important. Your role in this family structure is just as important as the mother. We need your voice. We need your love. We need your attention. We need your support. All of that is important. I think about now that I have a daughter, and I see sometimes when my husband, I mean, he's the larger provider. We both provide, we both work, and he's the larger provider, and he has to spend a lot of time working and things of that nature. And it hurts sometimes when we're going off and doing things and he's not present. You feel that absence. You feel it is literally felt. It's heavy. And so it's just like the realization that this picture, it needs you in it. We need you here, and we need to celebrate you being here.
And with that piece, I say to our audience, now this is something working in the retail environment, specifically when I was working in the jewelry environment. I would hear, I see the men coming in shopping for Mother's Day and all that good stuff. But then when it would come to Father's Day, I would be the one there fussing. What? Oh, we had the whole store on sale, 60% off for Mother's Day. And now Father's Day, the only sale we got is 25% off on these watches. So, I encourage our audience to make sure, you reciprocate that love to the fathers that the mothers receive, to Dia's point. And I will say now, one of my biggest selling gifting occasions was the push present. And a lot of men will be like, what the heck? So the women get a push present? Well, what do I get? And I would always jokingly say, you get a baby.
Yes, so true. Got to celebrate those fathers.
The messages men receive about fatherhood help shape the fathers they become. If we've told men that their greatest value is what they earn, it's time to remind them that their greatest impact is who they are. Fathers matter, not just because they provide financially, but because their presence, wisdom, encouragement, and love leave an imprint that can last a lifetime.
How has the absent father narrative affected families?
I want to touch on what you guys was just speaking on, and I have so much to say. I'm hope I'm able to get it in. I agree with you 100%, and I thank you. I thank you, ladies, so much for your words of wisdom, for being very transparent and unbiased and true to what this platform is all about. First of all, I want to say that. And dear, you talked about subtle messages. It men may not share openly, but we bruise like as well as everybody else, every other creature on the planet. And the impact sometimes is so heavy that I'm angry for men sometimes that they take it so well, like them not being a part of, like the baby shower. You almost excluded from that. a Valentine's Day. It really don't seem like it's for men. I too worked at my first job. I was really proud of because this was a real job. I'm not hustling. I'm not stealing, taking nothing from nobody. So I'm working and I'm making my little $6 proudly. And Famous and Boy, I used to help with the displays because I was what they call a lamper. So the light has to shine down on this display. And Mother's Day was the next biggest day besides Christmas. And so we preparing months ahead, months ahead. Father's Day come, maybe 2 weeks. We say, hey, put these wallets out and these belts right here and these ties, right? And that's about it. And we got real comfortable at just doing that for fathers. And I think as a whole, we get comfortable with do he really matter like that? And I want to say this, Dick Gregory. Dick Gregory was a great inspiration. He was a pillar to the community. He wore so many hats. But I seen a documentary when he transpired, I want to say, and his children. They went across each one of his children. And the things they had to say about their father, even if you didn't know Dick Gregory, it was tear-jerking to see that they said our father was our everything. He was our teacher. He was our trainer. He was the provider. He was the influencer, the voice of reason. And each child had all these amazing things to say about one man. It wasn't one child that said like he was all right. He did the best he could. They was passionate about what they said about their father. And I think that absence from the home narrative damages us more than we would like to believe. In a sense, I remember having a conversation. One of my best man in my wedding, my best friend, and I hope he subscribed to this segment right here. And my father was had a past, and so his father took the initiative to like show me some things and this, that, and other. And when he complained about his father, I got real in my emotions. And I was like, man, at least you got a father, man. And my brother, my friend, he taught me something. He said, you know, just because a father is absent from the home, right, or a father is present in the home, some things he shared with you may not be the best. Like just having a father there is not enough. Now, statistically, we say just having a father in the home, a child will end up in a greater position in life. Sometimes having a father there and just feeling that father is absent is sometimes worse than not having a father at all. And so we had to make time with and do to what that father position, what he stands for, and what is he providing, and what is he contributing, and those things right there. So I learned a lot in not having a father by asking myself this question, right? If you had a father, how would you have wanted that father to show up for you? How would you want that father to greet you, to treat you, to chastise you, to reprove you, to encourage you, to motivate you? And so I am that father. I have 4 children and I am that father. And I hope that my children will give me the honorary Dick Gregory speech that his children gave him, because I worked my tail off to make sure that I'm that father. Sometimes I love my kids, but they can be lengthy. And if I call and talk to my daughter particularly, right? Dan, let me tell you about everything that I've been going through. And I'm like, okay. And she tell me in detail. And at the end of the conversation, I'm exhausted, but I'm glad that she calls me. And I learn a lot when I'm listening. I learn a lot. So I'm always excited. And I'm one of those parents where I hope they never stop calling. I hope no situation is too embarrassing or too shameful that you wouldn't want to share. They know my life as a whole because I share it with them. I have no secrets outside of that. So I think sometimes we could be absent while we in the home, but and then there's this, and I told you guys I have a lot to say. There is this narrative that fathers are missing from the home. Fathers are incarcerated. Some fathers have a pass along, but there are so many fathers that are in the home, that are providers, that great providers. I see them all the time. Not just like fathers are not fathers in the home are not unicorns. This is not something like we rarely see. So when we say these things like fathers are absent, every person is absent. It's both parties that may be absent, mm-hmm. Right? But it's some strong fathers in the community. It's fathers that say, "Hey, y'all come over here." It's a guy, and I had to give my shout out to him. It's a guy in our neighborhood. His name was Big Man, and Big Man used to say, "Come here, little Al," and I come up there because he had so much bass in his voice. I thought I had to. He was like, "Clean up here." I'm thinking like, man, why your kids here? Why you making me clean up? He made everybody clean. He made all of us come up there and participate. And I respect him so much to this day because he was a community father. And I need to thank his children as well because they allowed our whole community to borrow and share their father. And he showed us like this what fatherhood looks like. He never said it. He told us in his actions. And if it was hot and if we need to cool off, freeze pops and this and advice, all those things was rendered as well. And I salute those fathers that are in the homes. And we shouldn't carry that stigma and stereotype as if there is no black fathers in the home. Even teachers have grown accustomed to when they discipline a child and they say, "Where's your mother?" They just assume the father is not in the home. And I don't choose to carry on this any further. Let's assume the best. The father is in the home, or he's somewhere providing, or he's somewhere waiting. Can't wait to embrace his child from off the bus stop that I see so often. So
I just had to say you are so right. And yesterday we went to a festival, and when I was out there, me, my husband, my daughter, we were out there, and I was looking around and seeing different families, and I just thought how beautiful it was. I mean, black families, white families, and and everything in between, families together. And I just remember having this thought, just thinking like, how beautiful this is, just to see so many families together. The mom, the father, I mean, young families, older family, like young, beautiful families, mother, father, children. And I don't know if all of them were biological or what have you, but you saw that family unit. And I just thought that was so beautiful. And I just wanted to add my 2 cents about the absent father impact. I also feel like that a lot of the things that we experience in this life is hindsight. We, as a child, you may not really understand what the absent father situation has how it impacts you. But when you become older and you start to see certain habits in yourself, and you start to kind of, if you take the time to begin to trace back, what is this pattern that I have? What is this coming from? And we may recognize that it is because there was an absent parent in the home, whether it been our mother, or in this case, because we're talking about the father factor, our fathers. And I think that for a lot of people, that can send them down one or two paths. Some people, like you, Mr. Al, say, I want to do the completely opposite. My father wasn't there, so I want to be a great father. My father wasn't there, so I want to make sure my children have a great father. And then some people can go down the other path. And, to what you were just talking about, that being an absent father doesn't necessarily mean that you're not present. I remember watching this. I love watching documentaries and stuff like that. And there was this one documentary I was watching, and the young man was talking about how his father was absent. And he always said that when he became a father, he wanted to be completely different. He wanted to make sure he was there for his children. And he was talking about why he started his business. And the reason he said that encouraged him to start his business was because when he got married and had children, and he was working a corporate job, and he was out of the home all the time. He was working so hard, long hours, so that he could provide for his family. But he realized his father was absent from the home. And even though he was working and he was living in the home, his children were now growing up with an absent father because he was not present. He was out working all the time. And so eventually he decided, I'm going to start my own business so that I can be able to lead the life that I want to and have the liberty to be there for my children how I want to be there. And so I just, thinking about how that narrative can play out in our lives, it's something that we might not understand how it truly does impact us until hindsight, but we have a choice. We have a choice of whether we're going to allow it to push us to do better, or if we're going to allow that to push us in the direction of being more harmful to ourselves.
Absolutely. I mean, I can agree with a lot of what you all have both spoken about the absent father narrative. I think the absent father narrative has created a lot of pain, assumptions, and emotional distance, not just for fathers, but for entire families. Sometimes that narrative has caused people to generalize or expect abandonment before connection even has a chance to form. Like it can create distrust and emotional walls and identity wounds and cycles of survival within both men and children. But I also think the conversation has to become more balanced and compassionate because absence, like you all mentioned earlier, is not always physical. Someone can be physically present and emotionally unavailable. So, with that, I say to you, Mr. Al, and all of the fathers and the father figures out here, we give gratitude for you all actually being present. I can relate to you and your daughter, and it's okay. Just like you said, just even if she is lengthy, I'm laughing because sometimes I do my dad the same way. Like I know with him having to get up at 3 o'clock in the morning to get ready to go to work, sometimes I just need to get it out. So I'll go around the corner. I won't even call him up on the phone. If I really need to get it out, I'm gonna go over there and use my key and go on in and sit down because most of the time he'd be sitting on the couch nodding and dozing anyway. So I need to tell him to get up and go to bed. But in the midst of walking him on upstairs, getting to bed, it's like, and Daddy, and let me tell you about this right here. Or Dad, I have a strong feeling about this. So that matters, being emotionally available as well as physically present. Like we need that. So hopefully this platform is helping to bridge that gap. Because fathers, we do need you. Like we need you emotionally, we need you physically, we need to feel safe, we need to feel protected, we need that stability. Like we need all of these things from fathers. And I just want to say, even in the absence of my daughter's father, because he was unalived, when she was a year old, we give gratitude to the father figures because my father has stepped up and has not missed a single beat, with his granddaughter. And I think that's important And even to the point, like I said, she just went to her 8th grade formal this past Friday, and it's like 10:25. And I know he jumped up out of his sleep because I could hear the raspiness, the sleepiness in his voice. And I got a text message, and I didn't respond to the text message because we were still talking. I didn't even check the message because my daughter and I were still talking about how the event went. So when I didn't respond to that text message after 30 seconds, I got a phone call. And I knew who it was because my dad has his own ringtone. So I'm like, hello, and he asked me, where's my daughter? I'm like, she's right here. Where do you think she's at? And it's like, he just sat there, but it was just that presence of making sure she made it home safely. And I could tell, there was still some worryation in his voice, some concern, because I said, well, she's right here. Where you think she would be at? And he didn't say anything. So I told my daughter, I said, say something so your pawpaw can hear you. And so it'll calm his nerves. And she said, hey, pawpaw. He said, okay, good night, and hung up the phone. That's needed. That's something that she's going to remember that later on down the line. That goes back to that presence, in her life. It's like my papa actually cared enough. He jumped up out of his sleep to make sure I had done made it home. So it's, we appreciate it. And I speak on behalf of all the daughters, who have that present father or father figure in their life. Like, we truly appreciate you, because there's some things that I truly feel we need a father's guidance. Yes, my mother is totally present in my life, but there's just some things that I feel like a mother can't, give to her daughter. That relationship is a little different. So this is probably an unpopular opinion, but I'm going to say it. Ladies, Father's Day is for the fathers. It's not necessary to be all on social media screaming, I'm the mother and the father. No, you're not. No, you're not. But yeah, that's my spiel. That's my 2 cents.
And I have to just echo, Ren, what you just said about the father figures, because, and given, so much honor to all the fathers who, have passed on and are watching us from heaven, or, from out there, because my father, he is no longer here with us on this earth. And I'm so grateful to have a father figure in my life. And I know that my mom's husband, my stepdad, he is always there. I mean, our grass is mowed today because he's the one who makes sure it gets done. So it's a beautiful thing that God allows us to still have what we need when we need it. And so even if you are someone who might not have had your biological father in your life, it's just a blessing that you can still have what it is that you need from the father figures who are out there. Like Mr. Al has said, whenever that big man, he was in the community saying, come here, young man, come here, and you've got those, come here, young lady, let me talk to you, let me share with you. Celebrate that as well. Celebrate and really glean from that, because I think that one of the things that we can gift ourselves is to help overcome that pain is what we feel like we may not have. Let's truly celebrate what life has given us. So then that way we can start to bridge some of those gaps and allow ourselves to experience that healing, so that we can then pass that healing down to our children, and then create even healthier relationships that then can lead to healthier families and family structures, and continuing to make sure that the men and the fathers that are in our lives know how much they are appreciated and celebrated.
So just to piggyback on what Dia just said, if all you bought that man for Father's Day was a tie and some socks, if it's in your means, go out there and reciprocate that love that was received on Mother's Day. And I would also say this last thing, then I'm going to go, because this is something that I'm very passionate about. Again, even being in that jewelry store, I would see men come in and drop $5,000, $7,000, $10,000, $12,000 on an engagement ring. Then the woman come in there and say, where those $99 stainless steel rings that y'all got for men? What? Is this a backup? Because I said every man deserves a nice diamond ring as well.
The father factor isn't about perfection, it's about presence. Whether you're a father figure, or someone still healing from your own story, never underestimate the impact of simply showing up. Presence has the power to change a life, a family, and even generations to come. As we close today's conversation, we hope you'll walk away with one simple truth. Fathers matter. Their presence matters. Their words matter. Their love matters. And for those carrying wounds from the past, we pray this conversation reminds you that healing is possible and that cycles can be broken. To every father and father figure who chooses to show up each day with love, sacrifice, and intention, thank you. The impact you're making reaches farther than you may ever realize.
All right. Thank you guys for another excellent segment here in the episode. This has been amazing. I want to thank my co-host, the dynamic dialect Dia and Ran, our jewel dropper. I am their co-host, your wellness coach, Al Thomas. I encourage each one of you guys to celebrate who you are as a father. I thank you. I salute you for every day, the things that you go through. I want to also tag and say that we know our cultural responsibility here as co-hosts and others, but our message and our healing is for everyone that attends and listens. So we want to make sure we get that out here. Please join us for another episode. I wish that you guys definitely learn something that resonates with you, that will bring you closer to your passion and your purpose. Thank you.
No more surface level striving.